Hey there folks, welcome to the Caledonia Gathering Online. My name's Corey, and today we're continuing our conversation called Love Letter, where we're talking about knowledge, truth, and the things that truly matter most in your life. Thanks again so much for joining us. It's our mission to tell people about the life and love of Jesus and then to inspire you to learn to live and love like Him. And if that's something you're interested in and you haven't done so yet, we really want to encourage you to hit the subscribe button down below. Now, before we jump back into this conversation, talking about the conditions for living in the light, for following Jesus, we're going to get our hearts and our minds in the right place by singing together. So go ahead, turn your TV up, and let's sing together.
Like a hurricane, I am a tree bending beneath the weight of His wind and mercy. When all of a sudden I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory, I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. And oh, how He loves us so. Oh, how He loves us. How He loves us. Jealous for me, love's like a hurricane, I am a tree bending beneath the weight of His wind and mercy. And all of a sudden I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory. Oh, how he loves us, how he loves us so.
In the darkness, we were waiting without hope and without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. To reveal the kingdom coming and to reconcile the lost, to redeem the whole creation. You did not despise the cross, for even in your suffering you saw to the other side, knowing this was our salvation. Jesus, for our sake you died. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. The morning that you rose, all of heaven held its breath, till the stones moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death. And the dead rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all who come to the Father are restored. And the Church of Christ was born, and the Spirit lit the flame. Now this gospel truth of old shall not kneel, shall not faint. By His blood and in His name, in His freedom I am free. For the love of Jesus Christ, who is resurrected me. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Praise forever to the King of Kings.
Every night before heading off to bed, I follow the exact same routine. I put Denver into his crate, I turn off the lights in the basement, then I go and turn off the garage lights, then the porch lights outside, and then I make my way into the kitchen and I turn all these lights off, and then finally, the last one is I go into the living room and I turn off the lamp. Now, Why I leave the living room lamp till last every night is beyond me. But it's majorly problematic. It's a terrible habit because shutting off that lamp last plunges the entire house into darkness, which means I can't see the coffee table in front of me. I can't see the chairs and other pieces of furniture. But most importantly, I can't see Levi's small toys strewn about all over the floor. I mean, the amount of times that I have turned off that light only to turn around and trip over a toy or bang my shin or knee off the coffee table or stub my toe on one of the chairs. It's ridiculous. I mean, I really need to start leaving a light on when I go to turn that lamp off. It's so much easier to maneuver, especially when it's messy, when you have the lights on. Which is actually really important. So I want to say it again. It's so much easier to maneuver in the mess with the lights on. Now, having the light on does reveal the mess that I find myself in at times. I mean, that's what we spent most of the time talking about last week. We talked about this idea of living in the light, meaning following Jesus, learning to live and love like him. And then John, the writer of the letter, offers 4 conditions for how to live in that light. And that first condition was confession. It was admitting the mess. It's being humble and willing to shine a light on it, to confess our own sin rather than spend all of our time pointing out the sins of others. In fact, for his fracturing community, John believed that taking the time to confess their sins regularly was a necessary prerequisite for reconciliation. And it makes perfect sense to me that John's first condition for living with the light on, for following Jesus, is going to be recognizing and repenting of your own mess, because that's what happens when you turn on the lights. It reveals the mess strewn about in our lives. But you know what else living with the lights on does for you? You know what else following Jesus does for you? It helps you maneuver in the mess. Because listen, we've all got messes in our lives, not just in our living rooms. We've got messes in our marriages. We've got messes in our parenting, in our communities, our churches, in our businesses. It's not just a mess in my living room. But living with the light on, following Jesus, can help you maneuver in that mess. It can help us avoid the communal toe stubs and the marital toy trips and the relational knee bashing that happens when you walk around in the dark. So, in order to provide some direction on this, John is going to offer his readers a second condition for living in the light. But before we get to it, I got to warn you. What you're about to read might bother you. It might get under your skin a little bit. I mean, he's going to contrast the difference between a person who lives in the light with a person who lives in the darkness again. And the difference is simple. And yet, when faced with John's words today, it may just knock you on your backside. It's a little bit staggering. All right, enough tension building. John's second condition for living with the light on is command compliance. It means complying with Jesus' commands. Here's how John puts it. We know that we have come to know him if we keep his commands. Whoever says, I know him, but does not do what he commands, is a liar. And the truth is not in that person. I mean, we're going to keep reading here in a minute, but I want to remind you first of the problem that John's facing. His communities, the churches that he has been charged with overseeing and taking care of and providing guidance to, they're fracturing. They're breaking apart at the seams because they've got these persuasive preachers who are standing up and claiming that they know the truth about God and about what it means to be human. And they're claiming to know the way to relate to one another and to the divine. And worse than all of that, they're claiming that if you don't pick their side and you choose a different side of belief, you're not welcome anymore. And in so doing, these preachers are tearing the church apart. And so John, in an attempt to mitigate this misinformation about God and how to be human, the misinformation that's leading people to mistreat one another, he pulls everyone back to the true foundation of the Christian community, the church, the facts about Jesus. Not just his hunch or his idea or the latest headline or what he saw someone post online, but only what he saw Jesus do and what he heard Jesus say. That's what binds the Christian community together. And so for John, the way to live with the lights on, to walk in the light, is first to be a person of confession, and secondly, to comply with Jesus' commands. He's setting up an easy tell for his people to know who to listen to and how to evaluate themselves to see whether or not they're living in the light. Here's the tell. Do you follow his commands? Do you put his words into practice? In Matthew 23, Jesus said, you give a tenth of your spices, your mint, your dill, and your cumin, but you've neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former. In other words, for those who say, tithing's an Old Testament practice, it's no longer required in the New, you're wrong. Jesus said not only should you be setting aside a tenth of your income right down to the spices for God, but that you ought to be going above and beyond that 10% in order to take on other acts of justice and mercy. Jesus said that. In the middle of one of his parables, Jesus said, then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or you thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? And the king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it for me. Later in the same parable, he would say, truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you didn't do it for me. Jesus said that. Once when asked about how often Peter, one of the disciples, should forgive somebody else, Jesus said not 7 times, but 70 times 7. That's 490 times. Jesus said that. And when asked what it meant to love thy neighbor, Jesus told a story about an ethnic, religious, and social outsider who took care of the stranger's needs. A story in which he made the ethnic, religious, and social outsider the hero. And he told everyone to be like that man. It's called the Good Samaritan. The point was that your neighbor is a person who has a need that you're able to meet. Jesus said that. Jesus said in Matthew 5, you have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Jesus said, listen, we could go on and on here. But this is John's point. The way to figure out the truth about how to live with the lights on is to look at what Jesus said, to follow what Jesus did. Don't let those people whose lives look nothing like Jesus tell you things that divide you and fracture your Christian community. And you, if you're a follower of Jesus, you had better be putting his words into practice. John's language is so harsh. Anyone who says, I know him, but doesn't do what he commands is a liar. Let's keep reading. Verse 5. But if anyone obeys his word, love for God is truly made complete in him. This is how we know we are in him. Whoever claims to live in him must live as Jesus did. Plain as day. Prioritize the vulnerable and the weak and those who are in need. Structure your financial life around generosity. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Live as Jesus lived. That's how you show your love for God, says John. In fact, John says that's how you perfect your love for God. That's what it means to be made complete. It's like adding that last final piece to the puzzle to show the picture. The picture of love for God is obedience to Jesus. And this is so important. Your obedience to Jesus is not marked by your presence here watching this video or in a church on Sunday. Your obedience to Jesus is what you do with the other 99.4% of your week. It's what you do when you leave here and you get up and you wake up tomorrow morning. That's the important piece of the puzzle when it comes to showing your love for God. It's whether or not you live as Jesus commanded. John continues in verse 7. He says, look, dear friends, I'm not writing you a new command. This is an old one, which you've had since the beginning. This old command is the message you have already heard. You see, the idea of showing love for the divine wasn't new. Pagans and Jews alike, they understood love for God or the gods. But up until this point, love for God was displayed in religious ritual, temple worship, sacrifices, and that sort of thing. But John says, verse 8, I am writing to you a new command. Now, the word there yet carries this meaning of on the other hand or at the same time. So it would actually read, I'm not telling you anything new, and yet at the same time, it is kind of new because of the way that it was newly revealed to us in Jesus. Its truth is seen in him and in you because the darkness is passing and the true light is already shining. In other words, the idea of love for God displayed in obedience to Jesus' commands, it's already been on display somewhat. It has already been operating in the world like a light in the darkness through you. Anyone who claims to be in the light but hates a brother or sister is still in darkness. And anyone who loves their brother or sister lives in the light, and there is nothing to make them stumble. But anyone who hates a brother or sister is in the darkness and walks around in the darkness. They don't know where they're going because the darkness does what darkness does. It blinds them. Now, why is John so sure of this? Why does he believe this? Why does he know this is true about God and what it means to be a human being living in the light? Well, because once again, it's what he saw Jesus do and what he heard Jesus say. Once during one of the last meals that John and the other disciples had with Jesus before the crucifixion, Jesus said to them, "A new command I give you. Love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." Did you catch that? By this Jesus brand of love, this self-sacrificing, others first type of love, that's how everyone's going to know that you're my disciples. You see, in a world where there was all kinds of voices claiming to know how to be human, how to relate to one another and to the divine, in a world where there were so many who claimed to lead all kinds of factions and divisions, John writes this community to mitigate that misinformation that was leading to the mistreatment and remind them that the foundation of their fellowship was not the opinions or the hunches or the arguments from some sage on a stage, but it's these facts about Jesus, what we heard him say, what we saw him do. And so if you want to live in the light, says John, you've got to live like him. That's the second condition for living with the lights on. You've got to comply with Jesus' commands. And listen, Jesus' commands aren't some oppressive religious legislation. His commands brought life and light everywhere he went. I mean, think about the Apostle Paul's sort of explanation of love. Remember the Apostle Paul? Christian murderer who became a Christian missionary, church hunter who became a church planter. You see, after being met with Jesus' love and forgiveness and grace, how did Paul go on to define that Jesus brand of love? It's famous. He said, love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it's not self-seeking, it's not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrong. Love doesn't delight in evil, but it rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. That kind of love never fails. I mean, just think about that for yourself for a minute. If Paul's right, and this is what the Jesus brand of love is like, then this is how you live with the lights on. This is your roadmap for maneuvering through the mess of life. You show patience to others, meaning you choose to lengthen your wick for people rather than exploding at them in every indiscretion. You choose to be kind, which at its heart is about moving in the direction of another person without the expectation of reciprocation. You don't envy, which comes from the Greek word meaning to be angrily jealous. In other words, it's not just that you have something that I don't, it's that I'm angry that you have something that I don't. The opposite of love does not envy would be to say, love celebrates the goodness that others get to experience. Love does not boast. The word literally means to be vainglorious. Now, vain just means empty. And glory has to do with the weight or the importance that you attribute to yourself. In other words, love has a proper view of itself, and it doesn't feel the need to puff out its chest and assert dominance over other people. Love is not proud. It's not conceited, not arrogant, it's not self-inflated. Love does not dishonor others. To put it positively, love honors others. Love is not self-seeking. In other words, love does not ask, what's in it for me? It's not easily angered. The word there means to be provoked. Love doesn't allow itself to be drawn into fruitless arguments of anger or rage. And love also doesn't keep any records of wrong. Love has a short memory. Love doesn't treat people as their mistakes and regrets may mean that they deserve. Love doesn't rejoice when injustice takes place, but rather it rejoices when justice is done. It always protects. The word there for protect is stege. It literally means to cover closely to keep water out. In other words, love is like an umbrella that protects people. And it always trusts, which is actually the word for faith. In other words, it's always faithful. It does not abandon others or cop out or give up. It always hopes, expecting the good. And it perseveres. In other words, it cannot be beaten out of us. That's why at the end, Paul says, love never fails. And it never fails to be our answer. That's what it looks like to live with the lights on. John kept on using Jesus' language of the new command to love one another as I have loved you. As Jesus loved us, so also we should love one another. So think about Paul's definition of love. If you think about it, isn't Jesus the best example of every single one of those things for you? And so John says to his fracturing church, love one another the way Jesus loved you. That's how you live in the light. Think about what Jesus did for you, and then treat others the same. So here's my question for you, for us. Will you do it? Will you live in the light? Will you employ Jesus' brand of self-sacrificial love going forward? As you encounter your difficult and challenging, perhaps even fracturing relationships, will you choose to live by John's second condition for living with the lights on? How helpful would it be going forward in your life to apply love's rubric as a way to maneuver through the messes? To ask yourself, what does it mean to be patient here? What does it mean to be kind? What does it mean to celebrate the goodness that somebody's experiencing? What does it mean to maintain a healthy view of myself, not overinflating or undervaluing who I am? What does it mean to honor this person with whom I'm having tremendous conflict? What does it mean to seek their good, to seek her well-being, even if it comes at a cost to his comfort? What does it mean to avoid being provoked to useless arguments with him? How can I treat this person as though their past has been forgiven? Because it has. And how can I rejoice in the good and true? How can I protect this person? How can I trust and hope for the best for this person? How can I love them self-sacrificially, like Jesus loved me? It's amazing when John's world was filled with preachers demanding people choose sides in a way that was tearing the community apart, John simply pointed his people back to Jesus. Look, just live and love like him. Live and love like Jesus. Our love is an others first, honor, patience, kindness, self-sacrificial kind of love. It's what Jesus did for us. And we know we're with Jesus when we're living like Jesus. So, here's the deal. Condition number 2, when it comes to living with the lights on, is command compliance. So examine your behavior. And I know this is tough, but I believe wholeheartedly that this is the way forward for fracturing communities. That Paul was right. This is how we maneuver the mess with love. And if you're not sure exactly what the Jesus brand of love looks like, then reopen your Bible. Crack the gospel accounts of his life again and start afresh, start anew, and devote yourself to living and loving like him, just like he did for you. It is so much easier to maneuver through the mess when you're living with the lights on. And so that's my hope. I hope that this is helpful for you going forward in what for many of us is a contentious time of fracturing communities and all kinds of division and frustration, that we would use Paul's definition of love, that we would comply with Jesus' commands, and that we would exemplify this others first, self-sacrificial brand of love. And in so doing, make our love for God complete. So, as you head out this week, Think about the Apostle Paul's rubric for what love looks like and start applying it to your life. It's in 1 Corinthians 13, starting at verse 4, if you need to look it up for yourself, and give it another slow read. But for now, take that with you. I hope this has been helpful, and I want to send you off with God's blessing. Go with the love of your Heavenly Father, the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit that binds us all together. And all God's people say.